Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today, we'll dive into a tale that perfectly shows how a simple act of kindness can spiral into something much bigger. Police were called because of leaves. That's going to cost you. My friend keeps a very clean yard. In the fall, he likes to get all the leaves before it rains and they become a bitch to pull up. His neighbor doesn't care about his yard as he has owned the house for a few years and is still not moved in. He lives a few states away. As my friend was finishing up sucking up the leaves with his machine, some of them blew into the neighbor's driveway. Maybe 20 leaves total. My friend finished up and went inside. About 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door and squad car outside. The officer said they received a complaint about leaves being blown into the driveway. The neighbor had been watching on his doorbell cam and decided this transgression warranted police intervention. You could tell the officer was visibly annoyed as my friend asked the officer to look at his yard and then his neighbor's. The neighbor had an old car shipped and dropped in the driveway about 8 months ago where it sat ever since. Remember, he still lives a few states away. While my friend told the officer he would clean the leaves promptly, he asked the officer if he could do him a favor, check the car for proper tags. The officer saw the car in question and gave a slight smile. While my friend cleaned the leaves out of the driveway, then officers were walking around the car looking at the VIN and running information, you could hear the neighbor on his doorbell asking what the problem was. There's a law, any car that's in the driveway must have tags and insurance on them. The police gave him a call and told him his car was in violation, and he either needed to put the car in the garage, which would need to be lifted and dropped in the garage, or get the registration, insurance, and an e-check on the car that can't be driven taken care of within 2 weeks, or they'll be back to tow the car and ticket him. Dude cost himself a 10-hour car ride to get his car lifted and stuffed into the garage over a few dead leaves. And our second story. Entitled mother thinks we control the weather. I was formerly employed at a large Orlando, Florida theme park. You know, the one with the mouse? Backstory, this takes place in the middle of July, and if you've ever been in Central Florida in the summer, you know it rains pretty much every single day between 3 and 7 p.m. In my role, I carried a radio like a walkie-talkie. This day, I'm in one of the parks going to a location to perform my job, and as I'm walking through the park, the sky's open. I mean, it's like buckets of water being poured out on you. I enter the location and see lots of people in ponchos and rain parkas standing around. I rarely perform my duties in the parks when they're open. When I do have to go in the parks, I usually walk with my head down, hoping no guests stop me. However, this wasn't the case on this day. Here comes EM. She walks up to me madder than a hornet. She stands in front of me huffing and puffing and demands to know when the rain is going to stop. This is how the exchange took place. EM, sir, when is this rain going to stop? My children would like to enjoy... Insert theme park name. Me, ma'am, I can't be certain, but there are storms usually in this area every day. EM, you are ruining my kids' vacation. Me, excuse me, ma'am? EM, I saved for years to bring them to... Insert park name here. And all it does is bleeping rain. This is all your fault. Me, ma'am, there isn't anything we can do about the weather. Mother Nature's a fickle lady. This is where she goes off the rails. EM, BS, I know you have some kind of way to stop the weather if you want. You people are just understaffed and can't accommodate the people here. Me, I can assure you that's far from the case, ma'am. We want all of our guests to have the best time, because if you don't, you won't come back and visit with us. You guys are the reason we're here. EM gets in my face, nose to nose, and says, go F yourself. Make it stop raining. Get on your little radio, and you better call someone to find something out. I'm not the most patient person in the world, and I could feel the anger boiling inside me. I had to disengage myself from the psycho EM, or I would lose it and my job. When there are really bad thunderstorms, like the one we were experiencing that day, we would get random weather updates on our radios. Just then, the alert sound for an impending weather update came over my radio. I excused myself from EM and stepped away to listen to the weather update. The person said the thunderstorm would exit property around 4:35 p.m. I returned to EM and said this in the most sarcastic way I could, knowing I would properly get in some kind of trouble. Me, ma'am, I just spoke to God and he said the rain would be gone by 4:35 p.m. Shockingly, EM looked at me and said, thank you. I just stood there with my mouth open, and I took this as a sign for me to exit the scene. Flash forward about an hour and I'm still in this park. The rain had stopped, the sun was back out, and it was humid as all hell. Just out of the corner of my eye, I spot EM, and she's making a beeline straight for me. I think to myself, great, it was nice working here, LOL. EM, thank you for calling someone so they would make it stop raining. Me with a huh, what look on my face? Huh? EM, I knew you guys could turn that off. Me, still with a huh, what look on my face, mumbles, you're welcome, ma'am. I walk back to my work truck, laughing the entire way. I'd love to see the looks on her friends' and family's faces when she tells them that she made you stop the rain so her kids could enjoy the park. And our next story. Neighbor of property I work at yells at me, then tries to get free work service. I own a small landscaping business with my husband. This morning we show up to our job with our truck and trailer for a day of weeding at a long-neglected property. It's trash day in the neighborhood, and in order to back the trailer in, I have to get out of the truck to move 2 garbage cans that are in the way. I move them both 1 foot off the road with the intention of moving them back afterwards. I assume they were out in the road for visibility purposes. I then move to behind the trailer and guide my husband into the parking spot. It's very narrow. Husband gets out of the truck, and we both look at the ocean as the waves are massive due to an impending storm, at least 10 feet high. Surfers are wiping out all over the place, and it's quite a sight. I counted over 60 surfers on my lunch break. 10 dang seconds into looking at the ocean, the neighbor comes out screaming at us about how the garbage truck driver can't see the cans and asks, what the hell am I doing? When I say he was screaming, I mean screaming. This guy chose violence and was looking to intimidate. I calmly responded that I was about to move the cans back. I was just looking at the ocean first. He seemed slightly embarrassed and muttered something like, I'll move them, don't bother. 1 hour later, this guy catches my husband going to the truck and asks if he can put his lawn clippings in our trailer and take them to the dump with our other debris. No apology, no introductions, and like nothing had happened. My husband was taken aback in the moment and said, yes, even though this is something we charge for. 30 minutes after that, he walks onto the property we're working at and says he just pruned a juniper and asked if he can put those clippings in there too. I respond, sure, if you throw us a 20. He laughs and says, are you kidding? You're going to the dump anyway, right? To which I respond, yes, and not only do they charge us by weight, but this is our job, and taking debris to the dump is a service we offer. We'll do it for $20. He laughs again and says, they charge by weight? My debris weighs nothing. He huffs off and comes back with the $20. He was so mad he wouldn't even look at me when he handed the money over. My guess, he thought we'd just say yes, and he'd already cut the juniper before asking, then didn't have a way of getting rid of it. Couldn't put it in one of his 2 BMWs and didn't want it laying around his $4 million beach house. Another short while later, he catches my husband and tries to find out which dump we go to, because the one he suspects we go to doesn't charge by weight. Wrong dump. And also, it doesn't matter. We charge what we charge. My guy, you don't have to say yes to us taking your debris. We decide our rates, and this is what we charge. Take it or leave it. You came to us. We're not going door to door asking for people's yard clippings. There's a minimum charge of $25 at the dump, no matter how much you have. Just save the $5 and the trip to the dump and leave us the hell alone. And our next story. Neighbors want my parking spot. For a bit of backstory, when I bought my apartment a few years back, I still owned a car and was looking at buildings that offered parking space. Mine does, and the spot's still mine, even though I've since sold the car. Loathed driving, spiked up my anxiety terribly. Those with no cars usually rent their parking spaces to other families in the building who own multiple vehicles. I considered doing that, but then my across-the-hall neighbors asked to borrow my parking spot. As it turned out, their newly adopted toddler has mobility issues and his physical therapist visits every week. We live in a bustling area in a big city, and parking outside the building is costly. I really like my neighbors, despite us not interacting much, and their son is an adorable little fellow, so I told them they could borrow my garage indefinitely. That was 2 years ago. I rarely have friends with cars visit, yay for good public transportation, and have never asked for my parking back in all this time. I'm sure at this point they feel like I've somewhat committed to loaning it permanently, maybe gifting it. And here's where we run into problems. My mom's been having health issues and she's been coming into the city for exams. She lives an hour and a half away, and since parking's so expensive, she'd like to use my garage. Her physician referred her to a specialist a couple blocks from where I live, so she'd save a lot on parking leaving her car here. So I asked for my parking pass back for an indeterminate while. My neighbors are distraught because their kid needs weekly sessions and have said my priorities are out of whack. According to them, my mom's only coming sporadically and on random days, so I shouldn't hog the spot just in case she wants it. To be fair, she cancels as many appointments as she makes and is very off and on. A whole different issue. Nor is her condition life-threatening, whereas their kiddo is still dependent on physical therapy to walk. I've since been chastised by different neighbors, and I'm getting nasty looks from even the doorman. The atmosphere around is definitely hostile, and I'm uncomfortable running into anyone in the halls or elevators. I know the spot is legally mine, but I'm wondering if morally I crossed a line here. It's your spot. You should not have asked for my pass back. You should have informed them you need your spot back. They should be grateful for what you graciously allowed them to use, not acting entitled to your things. And our last story. My brother's guardians are attempting to sue me out of me and my brother's property. This just happened yesterday, and I just wanted some opinions on it. I'm already looking into a lawyer, as I only have 20 days before my civil case. My mother left her property to me and my brother after she passed. When she did, I had just turned 18 and my brother was 12. I couldn't care for him, so he went to live with my mother's best friends, and they became his legal guardians. They tried to force me to sell as soon as they took him in by suing me for his half. My grandma and my father helped me fight them, and it never happened. Now he's about to be 18 in a few days, so they filed right before his 18th birthday, stating I damaged them and won his portion of the property, which would be $150,000. We also have a billboard being rented on the property that's been paying the taxes for the last 9 years or so. I've used cashier checks to pay it every time since my mother died. They're suing for half of the billboard as well as back pay for the last 4 years, which would be roughly $10,000. They're stating since billboard is legally under my name that I damaged my brother by not giving him his share, even if it was under my name before my mother's death. I never asked them or my brother to pay half of the taxes because we verbally agreed that the billboard would cover it, and it always has covered the taxes, only leaving maybe a couple dollars which are still in the savings account for the next payment of the taxes that are due. This section confuses me, however, because they never paid a dime for the taxes. I'm unsure how they'd be able to sue for that if they never contributed to the taxes. I just want to know the likelihood of being forced to sell, as my brother will be 18 before the trial happens. I'm sure he won't see his money because they filed as his guardians and not with my brother's knowledge. I don't want my brother to lose his inheritance as soon as he hits adulthood. If my brother was the one wanting to sell, I'd have no issue with it. But he isn't suing me, it's his guardians. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.